Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Bounty Hunter channel. Now imagine you're George Lucas about to send out Revenge of the Sith, and then it hits you like a bus. You forgot to add Obi-Wan picking up Anakin's lightsaber to tie the whole saga together. So with that said, today I'll be going over every time reshoots made the movie, like when Michael Jackson almost played Jar Jar Binks, or even the entire Vader rage scene in Rogue One that was added in editing 4 months before the film's release.
That was too close.
Starting out with the Yoda lightsaber duel, this fight that everyone knows from Attack of the Clones had of course one of the most iconic moments of the trilogy where Yoda is seen in lightsaber combat for the first time. However, according to the stunt coordinator of the prequels, Nick Gillard, they originally had a whole duel planned out where Anakin would be really in the spotlight here, fighting against Dooku as really their fight, and maybe Obi-Wan would come in for a smidge, but that was about it. It really was just Anakin's fight. But then on the day of, George Lucas just walks in and on the fly tells everyone that they're doing a moment with Yoda now, which basically meant the team had to wing it, which, as said by Nick, is what you have to not only do but be great at doing in this field, that being filmmaking. So he and the ILM guys worked together to make some shots for the scene, and we then got the interaction between Yoda and Tyrannus. So I've also seen that Lucas was stressed out about how they would handle this Yoda moment. I'm not sure if he's talking about having this stress before or after shooting, but it's also possible that he had this in mind and just didn't tell Gillard until the day of. And yeah, Gillard is actually a really great guy. I mean, I think the lightsaber fights are one of the best aspects of the trilogy as it is, so anything from him I'm gonna really find cool because I just think he's one of the best talents working behind the trilogy in the first place. And also a fun little thing that George Lucas did for acting legend Christopher Lee was he gave the Yoda puppet that was there for reference some paper fangs to reference the Dracula career that Lee had in the past. Also, you can check out Nick Gillard's YouTube channel. I think he has a bunch of the fights from the movies that didn't quite get seen. However, next up we have Obi-Wan picking up Anakin's lightsaber in Revenge of the Sith. And this of course refers to after Obi-Wan defeats Anakin on Mustafar and the two exchange their feelings to each other. Obi-Wan walks up the mountain and stops to grab Anakin's fallen lightsaber, which was then taken to Tatooine and one day given to Luke. When planning and filming the movie as well, this specific scene the team had no plans for, but this moment during post-production was made by Lucas when he managed to get this quick insert shot thrown in here to tie into continuity. And I'm really glad they decided to do this because it's just another one of those details that really, in my opinion, ties the prequels into the originals and makes it all feel like one story or one saga. I couldn't find much more about the scene or when it was filmed, but just know that it was definitely late in the process. And I wonder if George just rolled up his sleeve, traveled to the local active volcano, and then filmed his hand picking up the hilt. You know how hard it can be to get those actors for reshoots. Well, you might not know, but now you do. And while this is a really cool backstory to this random shot, it still doesn't explain why Obi-Wan says Luke's father wanted him to have it, but I'm sure this is another one that can just boil down to from a certain point of view, as is the case with all the other inconsistencies between the two trilogies. But at the end of the day, there's really no point in just nitpicking every little problem that happens with the continuity because it doesn't matter that much, and I'm sure there's an explanation out there, but the movies work just as fine unless you're really looking for these mistakes. Next up is the Darth Vader scene in Rogue One, and even though the basis for the end of the film stayed the same, with the plans being sent to Leia on her CR-90 Corvette as she's chased by Vader, the famous scene of Darth Vader disposing of rebel soldiers with ease in a hallway was not added until after principal production and was claimed as a fantastic ad. In an interview with Yahoo Movies, John Gilroy, the editor of the film, would describe the situation with the scene, and also Gareth Edwards, the director, would speak out about it too. Apparently they had like 3 to 4 months left until the movie came out, so likely September at some point. And with the help of actor Daniel Napris, they shot it in Pinewood, and after the scene was drafted to Kathleen Kennedy, who was okay with the project, only about 70% of the ideas created by the stunt team were apparently used, with the other feeling too out of the ordinary for what had been established for Vader up to this point. And it is again crazy that this was finished pushed so close to release. But apparently with this scene, the director really didn't want to add a bunch of new stuff to Vader and was really thinking about the fans a lot, as he was apparently with a lot of the film. I mean, I personally think it's better to kind of just think about yourself and what you want as well as what feels right to the story. But, I mean, going for fan service isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I wouldn't even consider it fan service just because it's something the fans liked. It's just a good movie all around. As great as this scene was, it's actually not the only change made to this Star Wars story, which brings us to the reshoots of that movie that completely changed around the beginning of the movie, going into Cassian, his introduction scene on the Ring of Kafrene, and also the moments with Bodhi Rook on Jeddah, just to flesh out characters more for later on in the film. The scene with Jin breaking out of jail at the beginning and being taken to Yavin 4 was also added in this burst of reshoots, which meant the majority of the character introductions in this film opening almost didn't happen. And it was definitely smart to go back and make these changes, especially for this movie. And as a filmmaker myself, it's pretty crazy how great reshoots can be. I mean, even now with the most recent movie I've worked on, I finished knowing that there is a lot of stuff that I could have gotten with reshoots that if I had better resources, especially, and a better crew, I could have gone back and done them and they would have really elevated the whole project, but oh well. Lastly, for this video though, I have the I know moment from Empire Strikes Back. And for this scene in an already darker film of the trilogy, director Irvin Kershner had to make sure that it wasn't too bleak, but also not too hopeful, as it is almost close to a death scene, since if Han is not released, he is forever trapped in carbonite. The original line for the scene going into filming was, "I love you, I couldn't tell you before, but it's true." And then Han replies with, "Just remember that, because I'll be back." When talking to Harrison Ford, Kershner insisted the line was contractual to include, as it would raise up the mood of this part of the movie. However, Harrison would then play around with the line a little bit while talking to the director, and then he would eventually out loud say the line, "I love you, I know." Irvin is unsure at first, but eventually comes around to the idea, which Ford calls to be beautiful, accepting, and funny. Carrie Fisher would get mad at the men, however, as she would later become a screenwriter and was angry that they were discussing the moments without her, since she had such a good knowledge of lines as it was. After getting mad at Kershner, she demands that from now on, she will not be excluded from the vital scenes whenever they're being changed during filming. And even if they aren't centered around Leia, she should still be asked about her opinion on the scene. And this still is a great moment that showed how actors can sometimes be just as important to the final work as the director. So those really are the main ones that I wanted to cover, but I also just wanted to briefly mention that yes, apparently at some point Michael Jackson was set to play Jar Jar, which is pretty crazy to me. I mean, apparently Ahmed Best, the actual actor of Jar Jar, really kind of advocated against that just because there's already a lot of stars in the movie. He didn't want Jar Jar or just the whole film to be overshadowed by as huge of a pop influence as MJ was at the time. And I want everyone in the comments to tell me which one of these you thought was the coolest to find out about that you might not have known before. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. In case you don't already know, I upload every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, I post shorts on Saturday, but yeah, see ya.